Welcome everybody. Just want to express our gratitude for being invited to this conference. We took our amphibious vehicle up here from the Illawarra. It's unprecedented weather system. My name's Aaron Sorenson. It's Dan Deighton. I'd like to introduce our team. We're really lucky today. We've got some awesome young folks. This is Kieran Worthington, Kiara Lewis, and Jesse Nikodievich. Fantastic. So Dan and I are going to tell a bit of a story of our journey with school gardens, and we've just listened to an amazing presentation by Leonie, and we've got a completely different model. So we'd like to talk about that. There's some familiar faces in the crowd who we've known for a few years now. And so I guess our project's evolved since last time we've shared. So we'd like to explain that with you, share that with you. And then we're going to have an awesome segue where the young folk are going to get up and tell a little bit of their story, because some of them have been with us for a long time from the primary school. So I guess that's something unique about our project.
Yeah, well, in a nutshell, Aaron and I bumped into each other in around early 2000 or late 90s. Both of us had been working in community gardens and environment restoration through the 90s, and around at the end of the 90s and the early 2000s, we connected. Soon after, we got a phone call from Big Harry's place, BHP Steel. We're in Port Kembla, and so Big Harry's on the phone and said, "Oh guys, we need some help. We've trashed the local environment. We've
the fallout zone.
Yeah, we've got some cancer clusters in the community. The land needs some healing, and we want to try and make amends. And we'd like to start by working in a school that's on our boundary in Cringila. So, what would you guys be interested in giving us some direction?" And we said, "Yeah, sure. We reckon if we're going to do that, this is how we'd like to do it," and we're going to share that story today.
Okay, so there's a bit of a context to it. Those people that don't know Wollongong, we're a heavy industrial town. Our soils are contaminated by heavy metals. That's it. As Dan said, there's cancer clusters, but it's not just in the schools in the immediate fallout zone. It extends the whole length of the Illawarra. So you're looking at like 30 k's north to 30 k's south, plus in the northeast as we get all of Sydney's pollution. So the combinations of those, it's a toxic cocktail. So how do we traverse this story? Everyone's familiar with Lord of the Rings. Do you remember the Mordor with the ground that's weeping with gas? That was a site we inherited. So just to put it into context. So Leonie spoke about soil building. I guess that was top of our list. So
just a bit of background. So Aaron's a teacher, a visual artist and a permaculturist. My background was in landscape architecture, permaculture, environment restoration. So we had a nice synergy between the two of us, both also doing community development work.
Right in the steel town. So I guess a lot of people decide where they're going to make their mark. Where are you going to have the fight? You're going to go away into a beautiful rural part of Australia with clean air, or you're going to take it on right on the coalface, and literally that's what we've done. Like Leonie, she's got a showcase school. Cringila's ours. And as you mentioned before, having a school community that embraces is really important. The multicultural background, or the area of Cringila is low socioeconomic. It was an area where migrants came in to live, to be close to the steelworks. We are, within 500 metres of industry. We're disadvantaged from a number of communities, but from different aspects. But the joy of that is the diversity and the enthusiasm and the energy that holds in that space. And what it's done is given us a model, and that's what we want to share with you. So through this time, should we just get straight into the dots? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So 2003, we started the conversation with the school. The partnership was with BHP, Cringila School, and the North Wollongong Community Permaculture Garden. What we did, we asked the school what they wanted, and what they wanted was a very productive garden. So we went through a planning and a dream it up phase. We said to BHP, well, that's what you need. You need to ask them what they want. You need to then fund that, and then you need to build their capacity to keep it going. And that was the model that we pretty much started with and have followed. And we called it the living classroom because we wanted to create a classroom outdoors, and then attached to this, the glove that goes with that is the training, the garden ambassadors. So the training part of it, or the capacity building, is about focusing on a team of ambassadors who would then know the garden really well and be able to tell the story to the rest of the kids and train the new kids. We piloted this project over a number of years.
Oh, excuse me, Dan, just for a second. The partnership, the money came through a community garden. So we had a permaculture demonstration site in North Wollongong, which we looked at developing a food forest or a forest garden. And that non-for-profit organisation held the funds or auspiced those funds, and then that's how that funding initially came through to the school. So it was an interesting, as Roberto was talking about, that invisible structure, having that community of volunteers, like Leonie said too. This is what's behind this whole project. There's many volunteers, people put energy inside it. Everything was ready to go. The community was ready to say, yep, we're going to support you 100%. Without that invisible structure, this wouldn't have happened. And it's often not celebrated or even mentioned with it. But that was, the in-kind support was much greater than the financial capital that we had initially. Yeah.
So in terms of the growth spurt, we had the chance to really cut our teeth at Cringila, and then over a number of years, we also had the ongoing support of the local corporation or local business that funded the training program, which is really where the success is. And then based on that, we were able to expand from one garden to a number of gardens and where that really happened was within the community of schools. So the other public schools in that cause, or the community of schools, took an interest, and the high school took an interest. Based on that, an interest was taken up by local government. So the three councils, Wollongong, Shellharbour and Kiama, saw what we were doing. They then applied for funding to expand the program to schools outside of that community of schools. And then based on that, we then had we've had another growth spurt where we've gone from our big program down into a small program where we're doing mini versions of our big program. So we're having less involvement, but a similar model of to doing the garden. Yeah. And
the other big growth spurt is there was a city farm that is just. We've just started, we've been involved with. We always dreamt of that idea of a K-12 program with an employment strategy afterwards, particularly for our community. And a local community centre managed to attract some funding from community builders, and that set off what's called Urban Grown. And it's targeted for disadvantaged community, and students coming through our schools are that disadvantaged community, and there's employment opportunities based there. And that garden is through, it's a lease, or it's an agreement, rent-free agreement with use of existing infrastructure and resources like water and power. It's very unique. So it's in its teething stage. So that was, I guess, this whole full cycle that we're talking about activating, as Leonie said, that cultural shift. Yeah.
And as Leonie said, the real steps for success are the principals on board. You've got at least one teacher who's really passionate and loves gardening, and the P&C's on board. They're the three really key, and they get it that it's not just a 1 year thing. It's about really it's going to become part of the school's identity. This is what we do. It's just like the sports program and any other program. The garden is up on the same level as those. So if you've got those three things, you're off to a good start. And it doesn't need to be a lot of money either. It can be very small and potent.
Just mention that the teachers can't be retiring within 3 years of starting, or the principal too. That's potential.
So I think that's
great.
That covers that.
Sorry, we're going to go through our process in a moment, but in that consolidating, we've had a number of really successful hits, but in this we have also had the equal amount of misses. And it's in those misses that our greatest learnings that have happened. And one school in particular, that even though after we were attracting funding, it's about this whole idea of capacity building that we learned really fast. When that dropped off, that school had so much potential, went off the radar. But then we had a principal with a lot of energy who we had a relationship with other schools, who's now come on board and has reignited the existing infrastructure. So that's a great story. But then we actually have had a few misses, and the community comes up to us and gives us that reassurance that it was these other factors, and so we're learning on how to traverse that really tricky field, and that's what Ben mentioned before when, about how do independents be able to support it, and we work together to make it happen.
And with that, as Roberta said, the really important thing is an exit strategy. How can we design ourselves out of the school, in the short term, and so they can stay on their own 2 feet.
Okay, our model is a forest garden, as I mentioned. So different to just straight vegetable beds, because part of designing yourself out, if you can get perennial systems in, like fruit trees and herbs and ecology that can support itself, then you've got more chance of that place being remaining in the school grounds, but also it being a centre of beauty as well, and an alternative setting for groups gathering. So we're both permaculturalists. So,
and over the years, this whole thing about incremental design, incrementally our designs are changing or adapting them, but there's a few key elements that come up all the time, and in fact, so they're common threads that we see in all of our gardens now, and our gardens really respond to the climate, so windbreaks where we need them, and full sun gardens for annual crops. But we really link the different sectors and aspects, really incorporate that into our planning. We're always playing around with levels, even on the flat ground. You've got swale, we can still do swale and mounds to create different types of niches. Our vegetable beds are big, long beds, so they work really well to bring a whole group of kids and a whole class out into the garden. So, the keyholes are great too, but what we found is that we can get a whole class out in the garden. We've got nice big long beds. Soil buildings at the top of our list, so we do no-digs, autumn and spring. Every year we drum that into the teachers, no-dig, no-dig, no-dig. And the kids really get it, and we're seeing the results of that. Our plant systems are all about guilds, companioning, and strategies that you see in nature. So in nature, what happens in nature, in addition to the soil building stuff, is this whole idea of stacking your systems, plants at every level, ground right through to canopy, and how those gardens change over time. So always having this succession, and so a productive garden right from the beginning, but over time it actually changes and moves towards a climax type garden. Aaron?
Spaces. That's a big thing. The personal motivation for creating these spaces, that schools are not always a place for the alpha personality. So how can we provide a context for those people to be able to come and shine? And also in our community, having those safe spaces. So we wanted our gardens to be places where young people would naturally gather. So when we first went into schools, we would observe how students move through the landscape and where they would naturally gather, and we would want to mimic those things. So we found that we love that whole idea of flow and flow and eddy, and that's it. And so we call them like the eddy points are your discovery learning, and the flows are your ley lines. So we want our gardens to pulse, so that if there's a movement inside it, they can move in and out, the community can use them as much as possible, to use them as just passive educational areas, or teachers can come out and deliver curriculum in them, and they're places of beauty. That's really important, that have a soul to it, and that's I guess it's fundamental with us. That's our signature of what we're into, is creating beautiful places that are harmonious and are peaceful. And what's really interesting with some of the high school students is that we've actually created some intention, where the students have given spaces intention and then doing sculptures with that intent in it to hold that energy in that space. And we figure if young people are picking up on that at such a young age, then we must be onto the right thing. Yeah.
So if we go to the process, I think, how we do it. we'll just quickly click through these, but there's themes that have come up and a pattern that's emerged in terms of what each school that we go to, and these are the common threads that each school's dreaming up. They all want, it's not what we're telling them to, these are the things that they want to see happening in their schools or in their gardens, so they're the threads that we're seeing, and so in the end we just end up having a checklist, and that's sort of like, yeah, they're the things that the boxes that get ticked for a particular school. They might not do all of it, but they're the common threads that we're seeing.
So how do we get there? We initially took them to a community garden where we had those elements. Now schools just go to other schools that have those elements in place, and the ambassadors are the ones that step forward, and they take both the staff, the parent community and the other students on tours, and very quickly the students let each other know what they want.
So we do this, it's a wish list, dream it up, what do you want? Teachers, go talk to the students and the parents, what do you want to see happen? And that's they're the things that come up. We then go through this, so where do you want to do it? So look at so each class would do a survey, and you'd have the spaceships and the lion head fountains and all these amazing sort of crazy sort of wonderful ideas, and they'll get nailed down, they'll get identified on a map, and then that gets distilled down into a particular site, and then we go through a pretty standard design process that permaculture does really well. Where's the sun? Where's the wind? Where's the shadow? What's the function of the site, i.e. where do kids run? Where do you need to seed? What are the structures? That all overlays into a bubble sort of layout or a space, arranging the space, which then informs the pattern of the design of the space. So this was one of our first designs that we did, or the first design we did in 2003. So now when we do it, we sort of, we've really improved on this. We build the garden with the kids, and this is Cringila before we started, and in the process of building, engaging students, and in that, and a few years on, you can see the transformation. So what we want to do is create like a serious class, we're serious about creating a classroom in the outdoors, and each of those schools has a different look, a different feel, but there's similar elements in it. Celebrate the achievement of creating the garden, and then we get into the real heart and soul of the program, which is about the ambassador training and building the capacity of young people to carry the garden, to tell the stories, to learn the practices, and to spread that message through the school, so that the school actually embraces it as part of their identity and their culture.
Yeah, so I guess one of the tools that came out of our design process was that we've been able to translate this on permaculture design courses, but one of the most enjoyable experience, and with community gardens like Kiama, but one of the greatest joys we had was taking 15 Year 8 students who were in Term 1 of high school through a permaculture design for Wollongong High. And what we did is we took them through 10 visits, pretty much 10 double lessons, and they pretty much came up with this amazing concept plan, had to present it to all the head teachers. I know Vanessa from Wollongong City Council was present at that, which was great, and they went under the hammer, and they defended their designs with common sense and rational thinking, and with passion and diamond sight. And then out of that, Dan and I, we condensed that, and that's how the design of the high school came about. And some of the students were ex-ambassadors, and this is the segue into the ambassadors model. And I guess that's our training, and that's and some of our students are ex-ambassadors. So I'd like to introduce Kieran, and he's going to just tell us a few words.
Hello, I'm Kieran. I'm 14 and I'm currently in Year 8 at high school, at Wollongong High School. I've been involved in the permaculture garden at Wollongong for 2 years. Nervous. And I am involved in establishing the permaculture system in our garden. And me and Kiara have been involved for this 3 terms in creating a permaculture mini-series, like how to maintain a permaculture garden in steps. Like we did pocket planting last week, then we do weeding, planting, and everything you need to maintain. And these films help to like train other schools, their kids, and train them. And these will be released on the internet over the next year. And I am an ex-garden ambassador from Cringila Public School. I started there in year 3. That's when I first came. And then I stayed on to be an ambassador until I was year 6 so I could mentor the younger kids. And I enjoyed it because I could express myself in the way that I wanted to in the garden. And I could learn how I wanted to learn, not out of a textbook. And I work with my friends, then I teach other kids. And I like to know where my food is coming from.
Yay! I need to just let you know for Kieran. Yeah.
Sorry, to the question for Kieran. So you're making videos, is that?
Yeah.
So there'll be a what YouTube channel?
What Aaron knows about that,
Yeah, we're packaging it together at this stage. So we can put them on Vimeo, but we're not sure. It's going to be it'll be a package, but it'll be available to schools. You'll just be able to go online to Wollongong High School, click on Permaculture, and click onto it.
So what's the name of the school? We should go to that website. The school website?
Wollongong High School.
Wollongong. It's spelled?
WARRAWONG. We're still working on that web end. We're grassroots.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know, Kieran actually has a photographic memory, so anyone who's going down to the garden on Sunday, you may want to check out this tour because it's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, when a young person who's only 10 understands permaculture concepts greater than most adults that you see go through courses, it blows you away. As a resident here. This is Kiara Lewis.
Hi, my name's Kiara Lewis. I'm 14 years of age. I am a Year 9 student currently in Wollongong High School. I've been involved in the permaculture project for 3 years, and since the garden first established. I've been recently going to other schools in the Illawarra teaching the younger kids how to do most of the permaculture practices, and we've been making some short films, me and Kieran, about all the different tool safety, planting, propagating, no-dig gardens, building your own soil, composting, and I like to harvest I like when we get the produce out of it, because that way we know we've grown it and what we've done to it, and we know it's all organic and how to do our things.
There's something you're really awesome at too.
Yeah. I've been making the pizzas out of the project from our garden to cook and to serve to other students in our school, because we've recently made a cob oven made out of a clay, straw, sand and manure. So we made that, and we've been cooking all our pizzas in it.
Ask, how many young kids go learning from you guys, from the older?
Well, we were working at 2 to 3 schools, K to 6.
And they really keen to learn?
They run out to the garden when they go.
Yeah.
They jump on too.
Yeah, they like eating the fruit out of it, and they get in and do the work.
Are they in awe of the older students spending time with them?
Every time we come in, or when we don't come in, they say to Aaron, "Oh, where's the other kids?" So, yeah.
Jesse.
Hello, I'm Jesse Nikodievich. I'm a Year 7 student from Wollongong High School. I used to be ambassador from Cringila, and it's thanks to Kieran and Kiara for teaching me how to be an ambassador. Much. Since coming to Wollongong, I've been studying the biodiversity of the animals in our new garden with some help from my other students in my class. We've been doing it since February at the beginning of this year, and there's been a lot of creatures been around the plant, in the soil, flying around and just eating the fruits around everywhere. They have mainly been insects, spiders, arachnids, birds. There are a few other ones such as grasshoppers and worms. Since starting, I've always loved being outside, especially helping with my friends, hanging out with them, helping Aaron doing all the planting and stuff. Now I know why outside came first, not indoors. Thank you.
Yeah, so Jesse's part, what's wonderful about Jesse is that he sort of represents another element to our program. Often, like as Leonie was working in the community garden, you're working with at-risk youth. But with Kiara, I actually run an engagement program at Wollongong High, and then Dan and we both work there together, and we're meant to team teach with other teachers. Now, team teaching often means that you do all the work, yeah? The teacher cruises. But we've got some amazing faculties at Wollongong High, and science is one of them. So Jesse and Kieran, Jesse's and my relationship, we intersect in the top Year 7 science class, which is part of, and they're doing a longitudinal study of their permaculture garden, which is really unique. And that's what I love about that, is that it just gives students that opportunity for what I think Stuart Hill called a praxis. Yeah, so, and that's what's wonderful. It's like, what is it to be a scientist? What is it to be an ecologist or a botanist? And it's that field work that students often don't get a chance to do. They might do it in an outing somewhere, but they've been able to do it straight on the school site. But it's also that connection to place, and that's what's really important about it. And also with Kieran and Kiara, they were outside their curriculum to run these films. They're actually not part of our programs. They've elected independently to step up and be involved in them, because there's no reason for them to work with us, because they don't have an issue with attendance, they don't have an issue with behaviour. They're just natural leaders, and I think that that's a wonderful testament of this ambassadors program. So we'll get into it. When Dan and I visioned this idea of the ambassadors, we wanted our ambassadors to be a nursery rhyme that just stayed in the schools, that got passed on. So no matter what teachers were in play, kids could teach kids. So how did we get there? These are the main points that we condense these. Yeah.
I can't see you because you're in the way.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Cool, no worries.
I'm very interested in this bit, so.
All right, so I guess that the first part of it is just the capacity building. So we've got routines and roles for the young students. When we first started off, we looked at stage 2 students. We trained them up to establish all of the establishment and maintenance routines, or the permaculture practices for their space. It's really thorough. We'll work with them for that class a full day every 2 weeks for 4 terms. So they do the full 4-season training. After that, those students have the capacity to bring other students in. So initially when we started, we looked at a small, unrealistic number for most primary school teachers, which is 15 to 18. At Cringila, at the moment, we'll have 38 students, because you've got ex-students like Kieran staying on, who are leaders. So there'll be 38 ambassadors happening, and then we'll bring an infants class in. And like Leonie was saying, you step back and watch it in action. If you come to Cringila at any time, because that capacity building's in place, there'll be 8 activities, and we're going to have a look at a bit of show and tell us some really fun slides that the kids are doing, and they're working independently. They're using dangerous tools. They're right there, they're right into it. So I guess that's the first part of it, that capacity building. Then how do we establish our culture? We've got one rule: personal responsibility. That's it. What you say and what you do. If you want to be in the space, they define what those things are. The permaculture, ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. When we start our program off, students define it. We've done it with as young as 7-year-olds. They can identify what's appropriate behaviour with each other, how to care for the earth, and what fair share is. It's really amazing. And once they're set up, the students define those rules, because there's often only one person out there, which would be us, and then because we're in that place of the overworked, overburdened public school teacher or teacher of any school. Then, as I mentioned, that peer education. If I personally, if I've got difficulty with explaining anything, the high school students are the best. The senior students are wonderful. They just know how to speak the language. They're not worrying about whether they're PC or not. They'll call it how it is, and it's straight in. It's very direct, and it's amazing. And it's of course all those learning styles, listening, like the visual, the hearing, and the action, and that's happening the whole time. That the students are mentoring each other. The connection and ownership. If we create a beautiful space together, as we all know, that's our connection to the place. And if our garden reflects what's in our local area, so that's bringing the biodiversity in, and that's having food plants that reflect our culture, or the culture of the community that is there. That was counteractive at Cringila because all our fruit, our citrus for the first 4 years was stolen. And before the fence went in, it was a motorcycle track. So, but we persevered. Oh no, we're core drilling less than 20 metres from us. Remember that, Kieran? They were core drilling, so a high-pitched squealing sound all day while they're trying to put out an artificial coal seam fire. This is not a joke. It's out. We're as close as where that concrete area is to us. Did all our outdoor teaching out there, and they're pumping bentonite or whatever they were. Funny story. Won't get into it. Then I guess the pathways is really important. K to 12. Students from Cringila coming through into the high school feeling like they've got a place, that they're valued, that their ideas can be developed, that they can grow themselves, they can vision the future that they want. We're very confident that these young people are going to steer us in the right direction, and I have 100% confidence that they're part of it. So how do we enable that to happen in a very rigid system? And I think our program allows that to happen. And I guess, as we mentioned before, that what we're actually doing is setting a domino effect off of real cultural change within schools, and that includes within the staff and the school community too. Once that momentum's there, it's going to stay. And I think that with the Cringila project, each principal that's come in has just jumped on board, because why step in the road of something that's really doing something positive? And as you know, the greatest way to have support is to let everyone else take the kudos for what you're doing. And that includes the top of the education as well. Like, let's put their faces on it. Let's give it to the personalities who haven't got a clue what they're talking about. We'll let the kids sort all that out if any scientists or specialists come along and, what they're like, to show ponies, and let them do it. And then, as I mentioned before, the invisible structures. And that, if we have an open school community, we'll get community members that are valued, and it's remembering them and celebrating them, and having that cross-pollination integration happening. So what our dream is like we can, and that's what we're starting to do, is bring our students from one school to the other, and they're our invisible structures. Cringila kids are growing the plants for the other schools, whether when we set things up, they're doing all of the simple propagation of soft stem cuttings. They're growing from seed with things that are localised. We're working that out after 20 years, what works in the Illawarra and what doesn't. So, and the kids are just capitalising on it. They're not questioning it. They're like, right, let's repeat success. If it's working, let's do it.
So you're saying that because the K to 6 have gone through the middle school now, the middle school picking up that they're interested in the garden?
Look, I'll have students that are three that have no English come up to me, and Kieran knows this because he's seen it. A little girl came up to me, pulled me on the leg. It was 3. Aaron, me garden. She's 3. That's a critty. So when that's happening, that I just had an afternoon tea with a local family in our community. Got invited around. A parent from a community who stole from us to a community that's bringing us localised seedlings and sharing food. They're harvesting from the garden, going home, preparing it, sharing it, and then sharing stories on how their students are enthused to go to school, how they've got more of an interest in the interdisciplinary studies. The garden's given, the program's given them the hook. The eldest daughter who's in year 6, right through to the youngest who's in year 2, and it's happening through those pathways. And that cultural group, they're setting the messages through to their cousins and those things. and those people too. So it tends to work that way, really passively. But again, it's taken a long time for us to get there. Okay, what we do, we like to check in at the beginning of our day. And then we want to step back and let the students take it from there. So every morning we've got a seating circle, so we've got that ceremony that's in place. Don't ask us how we got the rocks. It's a long story, but it's a beautiful story. We like to use a mind map, throw all the information on the board. How we do, we get the students go out into the space. They decide what they're doing for the day. They identify what needs to be pruned, what needs to be propagated. Of course, we'll have prompts there. We might have seed or cuttings or whatever the case is. But the key is when you bring large groups out, that we find is you have, like watering, you have low risk, high repetitious activities. So you might have, mulching with wheelbarrows, and there's a pattern for it. We're going to look at it at the moment. The watering and botanical illustration. And then you're going to have other, which we'll look at really quickly. And then you'll have your dangerous stuff. And so then you give it to the most dangerous student in the class, and you build their capacity. Sorry? That's right. He climbs our trees and cuts them down, and that's not an exaggeration. When students from Cringila come to us after spending 18 months in Lebanon and go, Aaron, can we hunt? No, Mohammed, we can't hunt. Oh, can we shoot? No, Mohammed, we can't shoot. I figure that you give them a pruning saw and a pair of secateurs and loppers, why not, so. All right. I know, that's freaking everyone out. We have an OH&S policy, though, that's written, it's all written in. Okay, we do our tool ID and safety, and we would spend so long on that. I'm sure Kieran could tell us how it drove him mad, but we can't go forward until we cover that. All right, then the fun stuff. Low risk, high repetition. Obviously bringing the community in. Because we mentioned that we're on contaminated soil, we just built upon it, got the soil fungi in place. We did that with chip mulch. The trick is chip mulch and molasses and water, just a cap full. That activates your hyphae. All your EM sprays, sorry to tell you folks, it's just molasses and water that's aerated or brewed and sprayed. You can do it yourself, you can get the kids to stir it up, and you can chant and play drums and do whatever you want to do, or you can just put it in the watering cans and put it out.
So, molasses and water. Is just
Straight on chip mulch.
yeah, chip mulch.
Chipped mulch, like chipped tree, high carbonous material.
What
Sorry.
do they do?
From an arborist. What does the molasses do?
Yeah.
It activates the hyphae, the fungi in the soil. So we like to use those paths, because that's how we build the soil. Once a year we'll dig them up and throw them onto the beds.
And so, sorry, because I actually live next to a 6-lane highway that's got a piece of grass that's this big, and I've been doing a little bit of little gardening, but that soil would be much improved if I did this molasses and water.
Yeah, just build it up. I mean, Cringila's soils have been probably built up conservatively, 700 millimetres.
Go through the soil that's existing there and then other soil on top.
You build it, yeah. You don't bring it in, you build it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in our forest systems, we're harvesting. So the whole idea, we're building soil because we're pruning our support plants down. The amount of energy coming in is quite low. We only bring in high energy, which is that embodied energy is the truck bringing the manure that's coming from the battery or wherever it's going to into the. We use BFA pellets because it's easily used by the phobia of teachers. Otherwise, we've used raw manure before. As a young, but we don't. We've had to change some of our ways because of responses from teachers, not from parents. And we need to make it more accessible. And you can just decant it into a bucket, scoop it up with a pot, and then put your hundreds and thousands on top. It's much better than like putting it in a barrel and throwing water in and getting kids to stomp on cow manure, even though it's more fun. And then the straw and the lucerne, but everything else we grow. We grow all our trace elements, we grow all of our other nitrogen-based plant material and all our carbonous material that comes from on site. Yeah. How do you get success? Plant natives, you can't go wrong. Windbreak species, biodiversity. And these are not staged photos, by the way. It's just going around and shooting it, so it's incredibly candid. Non-English speaking schools, like ID, visual ID, best thing. Worry about the literacy later. If a teacher comes in and wants to do literacy, they can piggyback on it. The kids can tell you what the name of everything is and their relationships. Witches and wizards. That's a good one. And of course we get right into no dig. So the photos here, folks, are from 2004 right till present. So you're going to see the fluctuations in the growth of the garden. So this is quite current. And kids at Cringila now don't muck around. Everything's knee high, at least, or thigh high with their beds when they build it. Oh yeah, that's the end of it. So that was this was a preparation for our spring gardens. And you can see the earlier shots, but companions, the French style planting, reducing all of that, the impact of the sun. Cringila's on a hill, so we're belted from the winds from every direction, as you can imagine. Water's completely running out. Underneath the ground is coal wash and slag. And all of our natives died in the first few years until that temperature dropped. So I was quite concerned about our losses. As you can imagine, now it's a different story. Yeah, this is a bit of a difference, like going from that open system into more of a forest garden, where we're using each of those spaces, finding the niches, planting for summer, where we know we're going to get a belting summer. How do we do it? And the localised macadamia nut that we found in with the citrus with the South Americans. We brought the South Americans and the Southeast Asian fruit trees in because all the people from Southern Europe stole all our Southern European fruit trees. So we had to think laterally. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. Just share that one. Oh yeah, and they kill it with state produce repeatedly. Yeah. That was for Dig Your Dinner. Yeah.
Is that the one in Sydney?
Yeah, that's one in Sydney.
I remember we went cauliflower.
Yeah, we harvest the seaweed locally.
It just happened to fall in your school.
Don't know how it got there. That's right. That's right. Oh, sorry, just with the watering cans, we love to put them in usually the recent photos, we put it in a lovely circle. So someone can stand in the centre and just fill up the cans one by one. That's really good for ADD, or OCD, kids with OCD. Fill it up to 4, because then the little ones can pick it up and use it.
Do you have mixed classes of how do you divide your day
Ambassadors. So at the moment, at say this one school, because this is this model we're repeating in different schools. I take a whole class. So I have 2 3D. So the whole class. So 28 students are out. Then there'll be possibly 10 that want to join, who are ex-ambassadors. So students who are in 4, 5, or 6 that want to come in. And they'll come in and feed it, and then twice in term 2 and term 4, the infants will come out, and then what we'll do is they'll do their science unit. So it might be growth and change or wet and dry environments, and so we just have hands-on activities where the students are practically meeting those outcomes, but they're just little stations, so the kids come out, they check in like we do, they take them on a tour, there's a theme, might be flowers, or it might be taste, or it might be harvesting. They'll go on that tour, so kids taking each other on their tour of their garden. Then they come back in, the leaders gather the teams, and then they just rotate through those groups. And because the capacity is built, the ambassadors can just rotate through, so they know each fortnight. If they went to looking for mini beasts in the compost, they'll go to looking at mini beasts in the soil. Then they might go to watering, they might go to mulching, they might go to planting something.
And your ambassadors, what year are they?
Stage 2. So year 3, year 2 and year 3, or sometimes year 3 and year 4.
Like high school?
No, primary school.
Oh, so year 2. Like how old are the kids?
7 and 8.
The model is essentially we select about 20 kids who become the ambassadors for either half a year or the whole year, and they get drilled all the permaculture practice. They come out every fortnight, the same team. By the end, for a whole day,
For the whole
one
day.
a fortnight. So they'll come from different classes. We'll have kids from year 3, year 4, and then there might be a couple of kids out of year 5 and 6 who come in as well. So you end up with a team of 20 to 30 ambassadors, and they stay as ambassadors for the whole year. By the end of the year, most of them are either ready to move on, but there'll be some who really want to stay, and they'll stay on as leaders to train up the next mob of ambassadors. And so, once you've got a full team of ambassadors, after the first year, then the second year it gets better, the third year it gets better.
We're talking about the ambassadors model. That's how we've rolled it out from there. We've also done the same thing in Coldale. We've had success. Port Kembla is different, so each school's different. Port takes students from year 2 to year 6.
All of them.
No. Select ambassadors.
And who does the selection? You do?
No, the school does. They select.
The teachers identify.
They identify.
So you've got the teachers on board to let the kids come out for a full day. So
Yep.
I've already had parents in the PMC say, I don't want my child out for a day. So do you just say, well, move on?
When the kids come to Cringila Public School, for example, they sign a note.
Okay,
My
so you
student
send a
is
note
going to
out
be
the
part.
parent.
Yeah, the school does everything. Yeah, it's integrated in the school.
Yeah.
I guess when we do Q&A about how we finance it, that'll shed light on how the power of it is, you know. Like Coldale, I'll talk about, like Coldale, the PNC funded, but the parent community, the principal's against it, quite happy to get the kudos, but will fight against the garden or any funding to it. But the parents said, look, we want a holistic, rounded education. Coldale's a community that our students from Cringila, those kids at Coldale go on holidays to the countries our students are from. Go figure, right? So that's what but then that community is educated and supposedly cultured, and they're saying we need it because 2 parents working, there's often an absence of a father figure, no one knows how to fix anything in the house, no one knows how to do anything. So this sort of setting is really important for those kids to earth them. So, and they've been reading up on the Japanese model of dirt play. So they've got that idea that kids need to be earthed, you know. But we can, but in this, we're looking at an exceptional model. That's what we figured and what we've done is we've just taken the best of what works from this. This has helped us cut our teeth. We've condensed it and we can say, we can come out and we can inject this program into a school over half a year, and if the school embraces it and keeps it going, it can work. But I guess we can talk about that shortly, just about capacity building of staff and capacity building or bring the community in. But then, the question I ask you is, do you ask your mechanic to fix your electrics in the house? Then why would you expect an infants teacher to grow organic food?
Yeah.
You know, and look at how let's be real, we're one of the wealthiest nations on the planet. We're a mining industry, we're a mining economy. Let's wake up, you know. What do we want for our kids? You know, it's in our community we're dealing with the externalities of industry. We're from Port Kembla in that community, so all the waste product is reflected in the community. So what do we, you know? So it's good that some funding's coming down there. You know. So I'm almost done, Dan. We've almost hit it. They crank it, yeah? They crank the compost these kids are just unbelievable. Not staged, by the way. You want to see the fight over getting into the compost heap. Oh, can I share something really interesting? All right, fear. If any teachers are into fear, I'll give you a good one. Okay, there was a student, we were unloading a compost heap. It was in October. We had a really cold night at about 15. 15. Well, it is from the 15 in the Illawarra. It had been like 26 the day before. There's a kid that jumped in the compost barrel. So the 3 of them were working it out. They turned the bin out and threw it back in. In the last throw back in, what happened, mate?
So the red belly back stayed on there. There's like 2 of them at once, but the red belly back stayed on both forks. They done it calmly. They put it back into the compost and went and told Aaron, no yelling, no screaming, he wasn't happy. Just Aaron, come here, please. And then Aaron's like, what? It's like he's got his arm halfway in your garden. Then he's like, then they're like, there's a snake, and Aaron's like, okay, come around. Sure enough, there was a snake in the compost. You can see the tail. Yeah, and I just went away and left cordon that off that area for the day. Then the next week they turned it. The snake was gone.
So we wrote into the OH&S policy that we have black snakes in the school. We have, what was our emergency procedure? Stand on the rocks.
Oh,
Yeah, stand on the rocks. The bell rings, stand on the rocks. We figured black snake, no rats. Yeah. That's it. We didn't. Let's not talk about the parents that came up going, let's kill a snake, let's kill a snake. Anyway, so they're right into it. Of course, this is the beauty, isn't it? You know, this is the great part of it. Yeah, our dogma's no dogma. That's biodynamics, yeah. As you can see, the kids are right into it. They'll put all their systems in place, as Leonie said. Yeah, pruning shears, they're right into it. They're not, yeah. And then I guess all the safety equipment, and this is the yummy stuff, you know, really, literally. That's not staged, that's a gas cooker. We grew Asian greens because everyone stole our European vegetables. So we figured we grew Asian greens, no one would steal them. All of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of kids from different cultures, not from Southeast Asia, or from vegetarian backgrounds, having tofu and rice for lunch. Sharing it. So we went straight out there, and different from like a chef-driven program, we're into growing food, and then what we have in abundance we eat. Now we have limited inputs, and that reduces the pressure on the school to bring it in. Eat what you have, be creative about it, don't be afraid of raw food. Yeah. This is the beautiful part. And then the kids went out to their gardens. So we had a reciprocating process, and it was filmed. So here these superstars from Cringila, and the oldies were like, come and see our vegetable garden, you know, like, and they came out to the primary school and their jaws went hit the ground. Yeah. And they're into propagating. They're amazing. There's your low risk activities. Community members, dedicated community members coming in. We were reacting to eating chili.